February 1959, deep within the frozen wilderness of the Ural Mountains, a group of young hikers set out on what seemed like an ordinary winter expedition. They were experienced, they were prepared, and they were determined to conquer one of the most difficult trekking routes in the Soviet Union. The expedition consisted of 9 hikers, students, engineers, athletes, all of them skilled in survival. Their leader was 23-year-old engineering student named Igor Dyatlov. What began as an ambitious adventure soon became one of the most chilling mysteries in modern history. Weeks later, search teams would discover something deeply disturbing. A tent cut open from the inside, footprints leading away into the snow barefoot, and the bodies of the hikers scattered across the mountain. Some had died from hypothermia, others had suffered strange injuries. For more than 60 years, investigators and scientists have struggled to answer one haunting question: what really happened on that mountain? This is the story of Dyatlov Pass incident. During late 1950s, hiking and mountain expeditions were extremely popular among young Soviet students. One of the most respected hiking programs in the Soviet Union was at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. Students from this university regularly undertook difficult expeditions into the wild landscape of the Ural Mountains. And in January 1959, a new expedition was being planned, one that would eventually enter the pages of history. The expedition team was made up of 10 experienced hikers. All of them were students or graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, had already completed several difficult expeditions. Joining him on the expedition were several skilled hikers, including Zinaida Kolmogorova, a strong and energetic student known for her determination; Ludmila Dubinina, an experienced hiker who had previously survived a serious expedition accident; Rustem Slobodin, an athletic engineering graduate. Another member of the team was Yuri Yudin. Yudin would later become the only survivor of the expedition, but not because of luck, because he turned back early in the journey due to illness. At the time, none of them could have imagined the tragedy that would soon unfold. On January 23, 1959, the team departed from the city of Ekaterinburg. Their destination was a remote mountain in northern Ural region. The peak was called Otterton. In the local Mansi language, the name Otterton has often been translated as "Don't go there" or "Dead Mountain." The route was long and difficult. The hikers would travel by train, truck, and finally by ski through deep snow. The weather was harsh. Temperatures often dropped below -20 degrees Celsius, but the hikers were confident. They had the experience, they had the equipment, and they had determination to succeed. Shortly after the expedition began, one member of the team began to feel unwell. Yuryudin was suffering from severe joint pain. Continuing the journey in such harsh conditions would have been dangerous. Reluctantly, he made the decision to return home. His teammates said goodbye and continued the expedition without him. This moment would later become one of the most haunting parts of the story, because Yuryudin would become the only member of the expedition who survived. Years later, he said, "I wish I had gone with them so I could know what happened." The remaining 9 hikers continued their journey deeper into the northern Ural Mountains. The terrain quickly became more difficult. Dense forest of pine and birch covered the land, snow reached knee depth in many areas, and the temperature continued to drop as the team moved north. But the hikers remained optimistic. They documented their journey through photographs and diary entries. These records would later become the most important clues investigators had. One diary entry described the mood of the group as cheerful. The hikers joked, sang songs, and shared stories while skiing across the frozen landscapes. Despite the harsh weather, the expedition felt more like an adventure among friends than a dangerous mission. Among the recovered items from the expedition was a camera. Inside it were several photographs taken during the final days of the journey. The last photograph taken by the hikers is both mysterious and haunting. It shows a blurry image of a figure walking through heavy snow. The sky appears dark and visibility is poor. And some researchers believe this photograph was taken during a snowstorm. Others believe it may have been taken just hours before the tragedy. On February 1st, 1959, the hikers reached the slopes of a mountain known as Holet Shackle. That evening, the hikers made a critical decision. Instead of descending into the nearby forest for shelter, they chose to set up camp on the exposed mountainside. The reason is still debated. Some believe they wanted to practice camping in difficult conditions. Others believe worsening weather made it difficult to continue traveling. Whatever their reason, they pitched their tent on the snowy slope of the mountain. It would be the last camp they ever made. And during that cold February night, something terrifying happened. Something that forced the hikers to abandon their tent and run into the freezing darkness. Investigators believe the incident occurred sometime between midnight and the early morning. What exactly happened inside the tent remains one of the greatest mysteries in modern history. But the physical evidence tells a disturbing story. At some point during the night, the hikers suddenly panicked. Something frightened them enough to make them abandon the safety of their tent. Instead of calmly accessing though the entrance, they cut their way out from inside the tent. This detail shocked investigators because cutting though the tent meant the hikers were desperate. They needed to escape immediately. There was no time to use the normal exit. But why? What could have terrified nine experienced hikers so badly that they ran into the freezing night without their boots or winter clothing? After leaving the tent, the hikers moved down the mountain toward a nearby forest. Investigators later discovered footprints in the snow leading away from the campsite. The footprints told a surprising story. They were not running footprints, they appeared to be walking slowly and calmly, as if the hikers were leaving the tent together as a group. Some footprints show bare feet, others showed only socks. In temperatures that likely reached minus 25 degrees Celsius, such a decision would be life threatening within minutes. Something had forced the hikers to leave everything behind. About 1.5 kilometers from the tent, investigators would later find the first signs of what happened next. At the edge of the forest stood a large cedar tree. Nearby, search teams discovered the bodies of two hikers. They were Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. Both had died from hypothermia. Their clothes was minimal and the branches of the cedar tree above them were broken up to 5 meters high. Investigators believe the hikers had climbed the tree. Perhaps they were trying to see the campsite or they were looking for something in the darkness. Between the cedar trees and the campsite, investigators later found three more bodies. Their positions suggested something heartbreaking. They had tried to return to the tent, but the freezing temperatures were too severe. One by one, they collapsed in the snow. The remaining four hikers were still missing. By March 1959, 5 hikers had been found, but 4 were still missing. Search teams continued for weeks. Then, in May, came the final discovery. In a ravine about 70 meters from the cedar tree, the last 4 bodies were found. Their injuries were unlike anything seen before. One had a fractured skull, other had massive chest trauma, so severe it was compared to a car crash. Yet there were almost no external wounds, no deep cuts, no visible bleeding. It was as if an overwhelming force had crushed them from within. Then came one of the most disturbing discoveries. Ludmila Dubinina's tongue was missing. Parts of her lips and facial tissues were also gone. Another strange clue emerged. Some of the hikers' clothing showed traces of radiation, not extreme but elevated. This sparked theories of secret military tests or hidden experiments. However, a simpler explanation existed. Several hikers had worked in environments involving radioactive materials. Contamination may have followed them. Eventually, the Soviet investigation came to a conclusion, but it raised many questions than answers. The official report stated the hikers died due to compelling natural force.
No further explanation, no clear cause. The case was closed, files were classified, and the silence that followed only deepened the mystery. Over the decades, many theories to explain what happened that night. The most widely accepted is the avalanche theory. It suggests the hikers set up camp on unstable snow. A sudden shift may have triggered a slab avalanche. Fearing a large collapse, they cut their way out of the tent and fled into the darkness. Without proper clothing, survival became impossible. In 2020, Russian authorities supported this explanation. Yet, many researchers remain unconvinced. Another theory points to military activity. During the Cold War, remote regions were sometimes used for weapon testing. Some people reported strange glowing lights in the sky. A shock wave could explain the internal injuries, but no solid evidence have been confirmed this. Powerful winds across the mountain may have created low-frequency sound waves, inaudible but capable of affecting the human mind, causing panic, anxiety, and disorientation. If true, the hikers may have fled in terror without understanding why. More than 60 years later, the mystery remains unsolved. The mountain, known today as Dyatlov Pass, still stands in silence. A memorial marks the place where 9 lives were lost, and whatever it was, the mountain never gave it back.